Imagine spending billions of dollars to reach another planet, only to discover that the moment you step outside, you have less than a minute to survive. No breathable air, temperatures cold enough to freeze exposed skin, dust that can destroy equipment, radiation powerful enough to damage your body over time. For decades, Mars has been called humanity's next home. But what if the biggest challenge isn't getting there? What if it's staying alive once we arrive? Today, we're uncovering the brutal truth about colonizing Mars. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why building a civilization on the red planet may be one of the hardest things humans have ever attempted. For generations, Mars has captured the imagination of scientists, writers, and dreamers. It is the closest planet that seems remotely capable of supporting human exploration. It has seasons, polar ice caps, mountains, valleys, and even evidence that liquid water once flowed across its surface billions of years ago. Because of these similarities, Mars has become the leading candidate for humanity's first permanent colony beyond Earth. Space agencies and private companies have invested enormous resources into making this vision a reality. The dream is bold. One day, thousands of people could live and work on another world, turning humanity into a multi-planetary species. It sounds exciting. It sounds inspiring, but there is a reality that often gets left out of the conversation. Mars is not simply another version of Earth, waiting for people to move in. It is one of the most hostile environments humans have ever attempted to enter. Even reaching Mars is an extraordinary challenge. Depending on the positions of Earth and Mars in their orbits around the Sun, the journey usually takes between 6 and 9 months. During that entire trip, astronauts would be trapped inside a spacecraft with no possibility of rescue. Unlike missions to the International Space Station, where astronauts can return home within hours if something goes wrong, a mission to Mars offers no quick escape. Every system must work perfectly. Life support, power generation, food production, water recycling, medical equipment. One serious failure during the journey could put the entire crew at risk. And that's before they even see the surface of Mars. Landing on Mars is an engineering nightmare. The atmosphere is thick enough to create dangerous heat during entry, but too thin for large parachutes to slow heavy spacecraft effectively. This creates what engineers sometimes call the Mars landing problem. A spacecraft arrives traveling at thousands of miles per hour. Within minutes, it must slow down enough to land safely without crashing. Previous robotic missions have used incredible techniques, including giant parachutes, retro-rockets, airbags, and even sky cranes. But landing a robotic rover weighing a few thousand pounds is completely different from landing a spacecraft carrying astronauts, supplies, habitats, vehicles, and years of equipment. The heavier the spacecraft becomes, the harder it is to land safely. Every extra pound makes the mission more difficult. Even if engineers solve the landing challenge, the real struggle begins the moment astronauts step onto the surface. The first thing they would notice is the silence. Mars has an atmosphere, but it is incredibly thin. The air pressure is less than 1% of what humans experience on Earth. Without a pressure suit, body fluids would begin to boil long before a person could take a single breath. The atmosphere itself is another deadly problem. On Earth, every breath contains oxygen that keeps us alive. Mars offers almost none. Its atmosphere is made mostly of carbon dioxide. There isn't enough oxygen to breathe. Every breath would depend entirely on technology. If a spacesuit fails, if an airlock malfunctions, if a habitat loses pressure, survival would immediately become a race against time. Even the temperatures present another enormous obstacle. Near the Martian equator during the day, temperatures can occasionally climb above freezing. But that doesn't last long. As the sun sets, temperatures can plummet to nearly 100 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. In many regions, it becomes even colder. These extreme swings happen because Mars has such a thin atmosphere that it cannot trap heat the way Earth's atmosphere does. Imagine living somewhere where every sunrise and sunset brings dramatic changes that constantly threaten your survival. Now imagine doing that every single day. Then there is the sunlight itself. Mars receives much less energy from the sun than Earth. Solar panels still work, but they generate significantly less electricity. That means any colony relying only on solar power would need enormous arrays stretching across the landscape. Unfortunately, Mars introduces another problem that makes solar energy unreliable: dust. At first glance, Martian dust may not seem dangerous, but scientists have learned that it behaves very differently from dust on Earth. The particles are incredibly fine. They cling to equipment, they cover solar panels, they work their way into moving parts, they slowly wear down machines designed to keep astronauts alive. Some dust storms can grow so massive that they spread across almost the entire planet. These storms may last for weeks or even months. During that time, sunlight reaching the surface drops dramatically. For solar-powered systems, that could become a life-threatening emergency. History has already shown what Martian dust can do. Several robotic missions experienced reduced power as dust accumulated on their solar panels. Some survived only because natural winds unexpectedly cleaned the panels. Others were not so fortunate. A human colony cannot depend on luck. Every critical system must continue working, no matter what Mars decides to throw at it. And perhaps the most dangerous threat of all isn't something astronauts can even see. It's constantly passing straight through them: radiation. Radiation is one of the biggest reasons scientists believe Mars will remain an extremely dangerous place for humans. Here on Earth, we rarely think about it because our planet constantly protects us. Earth has two powerful shields. The first is its thick atmosphere. The second is its magnetic field. Together, they block most of the harmful radiation coming from the sun and deep space. Mars has neither. Billions of years ago, Mars lost the global magnetic field that once protected it. Over time, much of its atmosphere was stripped away by the solar wind, leaving the planet exposed. Today, anyone living on the Martian surface would receive far more radiation than people experience on Earth. This isn't the kind of danger you notice immediately. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't feel it. But over months and years, radiation can damage DNA, increase the risk of cancer, weaken the immune system, and affect the brain and nervous system. For astronauts planning to stay on Mars for years, radiation becomes one of the greatest long-term threats to survival. Scientists have proposed several solutions. One idea is to bury habitats beneath several feet of Martian soil. Another is to build homes inside ancient lava tubes that may naturally shield people from radiation. Others suggest covering habitats with thick layers of regolith, the loose rock and dust covering the surface. These ideas could reduce radiation significantly, but they also create a new challenge. Every habitat must either be built underground or buried after construction. Nothing about living on Mars is simple. Even building a small shelter becomes a massive engineering project. Then comes another question: what will people eat? On Earth, food is everywhere. Fresh vegetables, fruit, grains, livestock. On Mars, none of that exists naturally. Every calorie must either be transported from Earth or produced inside carefully controlled environments. At first, cargo missions could deliver packaged food, but as the colony grows, that approach quickly becomes impossible. Launching supplies across millions of miles is incredibly expensive. A permanent settlement must eventually grow its own food. That sounds reasonable until you examine the Martian soil. Despite looking similar to dirt on Earth, Martian soil is nothing like farmland. It contains almost no organic material. Even worse, scientists have discovered chemicals called perchlorates that can be harmful to humans and interfere with plant growth if left untreated. That means astronauts can't simply plant seeds in the ground. The soil must first be processed and improved. Many researchers believe future colonies will rely on greenhouses using hydroponics or aeroponics. Instead of growing plants in soil, crops would receive water and nutrients directly through carefully controlled systems. These methods work well on Earth, but keeping them running continuously on Mars presents an entirely different level of difficulty. Every greenhouse depends on electricity. Every crop depends on recycled water. Every failure threatens the colony's food supply. Water itself becomes another enormous challenge. Mars contains water, but most of it exists as ice beneath the surface or trapped inside polar ice caps. Extracting that water requires specialized equipment, large amounts of energy, and constant maintenance. After extraction, the water must be purified for drinking. It must also be recycled almost perfectly. On Earth, water is part of a vast natural cycle. Rain falls, rivers flow, oceans evaporate. Nature constantly renews the supply. Mars offers no such luxury. Every drop becomes precious. Future colonies may need to recycle more than 90% of their water to survive. Even a small leak could become a serious problem over time. Then there's oxygen. Without breathable air outside, every molecule of oxygen must be produced artificially. Scientists have already demonstrated that it's possible to separate oxygen from carbon dioxide using specialized equipment. That was an encouraging breakthrough. But producing enough oxygen for an entire colony 24 hours a day is a completely different challenge. The system cannot stop, not for an hour, not for a minute. Any major interruption could immediately threaten everyone's lives. Power generation becomes equally critical. Without electricity, habitats lose heat. Life support systems shut down. Air circulation stops. Water recycling fails. Communication systems go silent. Food production comes to a halt. Power on Mars isn't simply about convenience. It's the difference between life and death. Many experts believe nuclear reactors may become the most reliable energy source for early settlements. Unlike solar panels, reactors continue producing electricity during dust storms and long Martian nights. Even so, transporting, installing, and maintaining nuclear systems on another planet introduces its own risks and technical challenges. Every system inside the colony depends on every other system. If one fails, others may begin failing as well. It's like removing a single brick from the foundation of a building. At first, nothing seems wrong, but eventually the entire structure can collapse. And perhaps the greatest challenge isn't technological at all, it's psychological. Imagine living months away from Earth. You cannot step outside without a spacesuit. You cannot breathe fresh air. You cannot feel rain. You cannot hear birds. You cannot walk through forests. You cannot swim in oceans. Every day, you wake up inside metal walls surrounded by one of the most lifeless environments in the solar system. The nearest human civilization is millions of miles away. Even communication with Earth isn't immediate. Depending on where the planets are in their orbits, a simple message can take anywhere from several minutes to more than 20 minutes to arrive. A conversation becomes impossible. Questions cannot be answered instantly. Help cannot arrive quickly. Every problem must be solved by the people already on Mars. Isolation like this has never been experienced by humans on such a scale. Scientists already study astronauts living aboard the International Space Station and researchers spending months in Antarctica to better understand long-term isolation. Those missions provide valuable insights. But Mars is different. There is no rescue mission waiting nearby. There is no quick flight home. Once the journey begins, the crew must depend on one another for survival. Every decision matters. Every mistake carries consequences. And the farther humanity pushes toward becoming a multi-planetary species, the clearer one reality becomes. Getting to Mars may be one of history's greatest achievements. But staying alive there could prove even harder. Even if humanity solves the problems of radiation, food, water, oxygen, and power, one enormous question still remains. Can people actually build a permanent civilization on Mars? The answer is far more complicated than many people realize. A successful colony isn't just a collection of habitats. It must become a self-sustaining society. That means producing building materials, manufacturing tools, repairing equipment, growing food, generating energy, and eventually expanding without depending on constant shipments from Earth. In the beginning, every screw, every circuit board, every medical supply, and every replacement part would have to travel millions of miles through space. That creates a dangerous level of dependence. If a supply mission is delayed, if a rocket fails during launch, if critical equipment never arrives, the consequences could threaten the entire colony. This is why scientists often talk about a concept called self-sufficiency. The goal is simple in theory, but incredibly difficult in practice. A Martian settlement must eventually learn to survive using the planet's own resources. Researchers call this living off the land. Mars does offer useful materials. Its soil contains minerals that could be used for construction. Ice can provide water. Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere can be converted into oxygen and even fuel. But turning raw materials into useful products requires factories, machines, skilled workers, and enormous amounts of energy. None of those systems appear overnight. Every new capability takes years to build. Construction itself presents another major obstacle. On Earth, workers rely on cranes, trucks, roads, and a constant flow of materials. Mars has almost none of these advantages. Every building begins with limited equipment transported across space. Scientists are exploring ways to use robotic construction before astronauts even arrive. Large autonomous machines could prepare landing sites, build protective walls, and assemble habitats long before the first human mission touches down. This approach could reduce risk. But robots also break. Dust damages moving parts. Extreme temperatures stress mechanical systems. Repairs become difficult when spare parts are thousands of miles away. Medical care presents another serious concern. On Earth, emergencies are often handled within minutes. An ambulance arrives. A hospital provides specialists. Advanced equipment is immediately available. On Mars, none of that exists. A doctor would have only the supplies already inside the colony. Complex surgeries could become extremely difficult. Serious illnesses might have no immediate treatment. Even something as common as appendicitis could become life-threatening if the necessary medical equipment isn't available. Future astronauts will likely receive extensive medical training because every crew member may need to assist during emergencies. Healthcare on Mars won't simply depend on doctors. It will depend on everyone. Gravity introduces another challenge that scientists still don't fully understand. Mars has only about 38% of Earth's gravity. That is enough to allow people to walk normally, but no human has ever lived in that environment for years. Researchers know that astronauts living in microgravity lose muscle strength and bone density over time. Exercise helps reduce those effects, but it doesn't eliminate them. Would living in Martian gravity slow those problems? Would children born on Mars develop differently? Could humans eventually adapt? Right now, nobody knows. The first settlers would become part of one of the largest scientific experiments in human history. Then there is reproduction. If Mars is truly going to become a permanent home, future generations must eventually be born there. But scientists still don't know how lower gravity and increased radiation would affect pregnancy or childhood development. These questions remain unanswered because no human has ever attempted them beyond Earth. Until those answers exist, the dream of building a lasting civilization remains uncertain. Economics also plays a huge role. Colonizing Mars isn't just a scientific challenge, it's a financial one. Sending a single kilogram of cargo into space costs an enormous amount of money. Although launch costs have fallen dramatically in recent years, building an entire city on another planet would still require investments measured in hundreds of billions, or even trillions, of dollars over many decades. Governments would need long-term political commitment. Private companies would need sustainable business models. International cooperation would likely become essential. No nation has ever attempted a project on this scale. Then comes the question few people ask. Why colonize Mars at all? Some believe it could serve as a backup for humanity if Earth ever experiences a global catastrophe. Others see Mars as a place for scientific discovery and technological advancement. Many argue that exploring new worlds has always driven human progress. History shows that exploration often leads to innovations no one expected. The technologies developed for Mars could improve life on Earth in ways we cannot yet imagine. But critics raise an important point. Earth already provides breathable air, liquid water, fertile soil, and an environment perfectly suited for human life. Instead of spending enormous resources trying to survive on another planet, should humanity focus more on protecting the one we already have? It's a debate that continues today. Perhaps the answer isn't choosing one over the other. Perhaps humanity can do both. Protect Earth while continuing to explore the solar system. After all, exploration has always been part of human nature. From crossing oceans to reaching the moon, every generation has pushed beyond the limits of the previous one. Mars may simply represent the next chapter in that story. But unlike past frontiers, this one offers no margin for error. Every step forward requires extraordinary planning. Every mission carries enormous risk. Every success depends on thousands of people working together across decades. The dream is real, the technology is advancing, but the obstacles remain enormous. And before humans can truly call Mars home, one final challenge may prove to be the greatest of them all. The greatest challenge of colonizing Mars may not be technology. It may not be money. It may not even be distance. The greatest challenge is survival. On Earth, survival is something most of us rarely think about. We breathe without effort. We drink clean water. We walk outside without wearing protective equipment. If the power goes out, it's usually an inconvenience. On Mars, every one of those things becomes a matter of life and death. Every breath depends on machines. Every meal depends on carefully managed systems. Every drop of water must be collected, purified, and recycled. Every source of electricity keeps the colony alive. If even one critical system fails, the consequences could be immediate. There is no nearby city to provide help. There are no emergency responders. There is no rescue helicopter. Everything the colonists need must already be there. That level of responsibility has never existed in human history. A Martian colony would operate like a giant living machine. Each part supports every other part. The power system keeps the life support systems running. The life support systems produce breathable air. Water recycling supports agriculture. Agriculture provides food. Food keeps the crew healthy enough to maintain the systems. If one link in that chain breaks, the entire colony could be at risk. That is why engineers place such importance on redundancy. Every essential system must have backups. Then backups for the backups. Multiple power sources, extra oxygen generators, emergency food supplies, reserve water storage, duplicate communication systems. Even then, nothing can guarantee complete safety. Mars constantly reminds us that nature always has the final say. Yet despite every danger, people continue preparing for the journey. Why? Because history has shown that humanity has never stopped exploring. When early sailors crossed unknown oceans, they faced enormous risks. Many never returned. When pilots attempted the first flights across continents and oceans, success was far from guaranteed. When astronauts first traveled to the moon, nobody knew exactly what would happen. Every major step in exploration required courage, preparation, and an acceptance of uncertainty. Mars is no different. The people who eventually travel there will understand the risks better than anyone. They will know they are entering one of the harshest environments ever visited by humans. But they will also know they are making history. The first footprints on Mars will represent far more than another successful space mission. They will mark the beginning of a completely new era for humanity, an era in which humans are no longer limited to a single planet. Still, becoming a multi-planetary species doesn't mean Mars will become a second Earth. That is one of the biggest misconceptions surrounding colonization. Mars will never be an easy place to live, not in our lifetime, perhaps not for centuries. Even with remarkable technological progress, future settlers will likely spend much of their lives inside protected habitats. Spacesuits will remain essential for outdoor work. Resources will always need careful management. Life will require constant planning. It won't resemble the science fiction cities often shown in movies. The reality will be far more demanding. Every sunrise will bring new challenges. Every day will require teamwork, discipline, and resilience. And perhaps that's what makes the idea so remarkable. Humans have always achieved extraordinary things by overcoming extraordinary obstacles. The same curiosity that pushed our ancestors across continents now pushes scientists, engineers, and astronauts toward another world. Each mission teaches us something new. Each robotic explorer expands our understanding. Each technological breakthrough brings humanity one step closer. No one can say exactly when the first permanent colony will exist. Some believe it could happen within a few decades. Others believe it will take much longer. The timeline remains uncertain. But one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The question is no longer whether humans can reach Mars. We already know that's possible. The real question is whether humans can build a thriving society there that lasts for generations. That challenge will test every field of science: engineering, medicine, agriculture, psychology, physics, biology, and perhaps most importantly, human determination. Colonizing Mars is not simply about planting a flag. It is about creating a place where people can live, work, and build a future under conditions unlike anything our species has ever experienced. The road ahead will be long. There will be failures, unexpected setbacks, new discoveries, and solutions that haven't even been imagined yet. That is how exploration has always worked. Every generation solves problems that once seemed impossible. Perhaps one day, children will grow up knowing that humans live on two worlds. Perhaps spacecraft will travel regularly between Earth and Mars. Perhaps entire communities will exist beneath protective domes or inside underground habitats. Today, those ideas still sound extraordinary, but so did flying across the Atlantic, landing on the moon, or carrying a supercomputer in your pocket. The future has a way of arriving faster than we expect. Until then, Mars remains both an incredible opportunity and an unforgiving reminder of how special Earth truly is. Our home planet gives us everything we need to survive without asking for anything in return. Mars offers none of those gifts. Every advantage must be created. Every victory must be earned. And that is the brutal truth about colonizing Mars. If humanity succeeds, it won't be because Mars became easier. It will be because humans became capable of overcoming one of the greatest challenges in history. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next journey into the mysteries of space and the future of humanity. Until next time, keep looking up.